Welcome back. And today I'm going to be talking about how horrible women can be. Let's just be frank. That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so I'm probably that's a little bit of hyperbole. I'm not necessarily trying to attempt to denigrate my own gender. It's just that we are constantly being told about toxic masculinity and being reminded about, the fact that there's even a word for it, like so much so that when I was writing my notes up for this particular episode and doing my research, as soon as I typed toxic space, it auto-filled masculinity. So it's apparently just an assumption that if you type toxic followed by a space, you're going to be talking about masculinity. Today, I want to talk about the possibility that there is such a thing as toxic femininity, and only in the sense that, yes, women too can be horrible. And due to biology, how this toxic behavior manifests is different. Because unlike the left would like to tell you, there is a difference between men and women. And because of this difference, our aggression presents in different ways. So that's what I want to talk about today. But before I get into the video, I'd recommend that you hit subscribe, ring that bell so you get notifications. And if it's your first time here and you're wondering how to say this name, it's Mercedes. So let's go ahead and let's get into the video. So let's talk about the ladies and the concept of toxic femininity. Because believe it or not, women are completely capable of being horrible. Any woman who has been a young girl in her life, which is basically every woman, can honestly tell you of the awfulness that girls and women are capable of. Although most women will only tell you in the strictest of confidence, because you're not supposed to be bad-mouthing your own gender, because, women supporting women and all. And don't get me wrong, I fully support women. However, I also think they should be called out when they engage in horrible behavior.
Shout out to all my queens.
But it just seems like anytime you call a woman out, be it you are a female yourself or heaven forbid you do it as a man, you're accused of a serious wrongdoing. And especially if you're a woman calling another woman out, one of the first things you're accused of is of being jealous, which is one of my favorite accusations. However, I'm just going to let you know that no, I am not jealous about your horrible behavior. Not even a little bit. And in most of media news coverage, we're constantly being told how amazing women are. And don't get me wrong, women are amazing. But then we're also told how toxic men are, as if there is a binary, woman good, man bad. It's like the whole manspreading idea when that first popped up. Have you ever seen how much crap a woman will carry on public transportation? We're talking about multiple bags, the purse, drinks, just everything. And they're very quick to go ahead and put it on the seat next to them. I don't understand why we get so upset with men sitting the way they sit. Consider it maybe comfort. I don't know. Imagine that. Now, contrary to what the left will tell you, men and women are different. And for this reason, toxic behavior manifests differently in men than it does in women. And we have heard, read, been told plenty about how toxic masculinity is, i.e. men. But what about women? How does aggression and toxic behavior manifest in women? Now, feminine traits are typically seen as positives. They're associated with positive things. Traits such as empathy, caring, nurturing, being more patient. And these all sound awesome, but believe it or not, these can manifest in a negative way. So how do these manifest in women as toxic behavior? When a man exhibits toxic behavior, it will typically present with physical aggression. You've seen it all the time. They fight, they beat the crap out of each other, right? Moving on.
I would like to punch you in the face again.
However, female aggression is much more manipulative, may I say. What are some examples of female aggression? If you're a young woman, you probably are very familiar with all of these. But for those of us who aren't,
I'm listening.
I'm just going to go through them really quick. Mainly, the biggest ones will be reputation destruction, emotional manipulation, and ostracizing. Those are the tools that you see most common, especially initially in young women. And they do this through gossip and social media. Social media has definitely advanced these techniques. It's just kind of fast forward them. However, it can be difficult to identify feminine aggression because it's so covert and psychological. Now, both boys and girls are capable of bullying. Boys will typically, or young men will typically bully with physical aggression, but what young women do is very different. So you know the typical physical aggression of hitting, teasing, locker stuffing that boys will typically do. But I want to share this article on Very Well Family from pediatric psychologist Sherry Gordon. So in this article, it asks, do girls and boys bully differently? And you can go through the entire article, but the one point that I wanted to feature is here, female bullying. It says females tend to bully other people indirectly or by using relational aggression. This type of bullying usually includes verbal assaults, ostracizing, spreading rumors, and gossiping, the epitome of mean behavior. Moreover, people that engage in relational aggression disguise their bullying and act in a more passive aggressive ways, which make this type of bullying more difficult to spot. Like males, females also form groups around a leader, but in these groups, especially cliques, people are in constant competition with one another. As a result, the people in the group never truly trust each other within the clique. Needless to say, it is not just boys that bully or use aggression when bullying, but it is also young women. And you might think that this is exclusively like I'm talking about young women, but believe me, grown-ass women are completely capable of bullying also. And I can only imagine like what I picture typically when you're talking about this group clique type bullying is the queen bee syndrome, where you have a leader and then she has all her minions around her who want her approval, and she manipulates them to do her deeds, but also to keep them in place to keep herself at the top. The perfect example of the queen bee syndrome would be Regina George from Mean Girls.
Evil takes a human form in Regina George. Don't be fooled, because she may seem like your typical selfish, backstabbing, slut-faced hoe bag, but in reality, she is so much more than that.
She's the queen bee, the star. Those other two are just her little workers.
Regina George. How do I even begin to explain Regina George?
I mean, I know it's kind of like a stereotype, but it literally, every one of us knew at least one Regina George when we were in high school. I know I had one. Typically, the queen bee will manage her gang by gossiping, talking down to people, herself showing off, but also doing backhanded compliments or manipulative comments in order to keep her minions in their place. Thankfully, not every female group has this queen bee bullying structure, but there is no question that the way females and males handle conflict resolution is very different. Now, I hate to generalize, but generally, females are experts at holding a grudge. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I have had a friend, I thought everything was cool, there's still an issue. They're still holding a grudge. I mean, why can't we be like the boys? Why can't we just punch each other in the face, call it good, and go have a beer? Instead, there's an issue, you're angry, they lurk in the bushes and then suddenly jump out at you like some crazy banshee about something that you offended them with a week ago.
Why are you the way that you are?
I almost feel like I'm crazy when that happens. I'm like, didn't we already resolve this? So needless to say, females will typically have a much harder time resolving conflict with same-sex peers. In a study I found when examining same-sex peer conflict, that's like a mouthful, this was found. It says, compared with men, women reported their anger would dissipate less quickly and they would take longer to reconcile. Women also exhibited increased heart rate, but little change in cortisol, whereas men exhibited little change in heart rate, but increased cortisol production. We interpret the results as indicating that women are less prepared than men to resolve conflict with same-sex peer. I think we've all experienced the steeping of anger with a fellow female. At some point or another, you think things are resolved and they're not. How often have you experienced a woman say, "I'm fine. I'm fine"?
Yeah. Well, it's fine. She'll be fine. It's fine.
Maybe it is fine.
To then come out of nowhere with a grudge or with some kind of problem that still needs to be resolved. It's like a sneak attack. And the sneak attack game is strong with women. Something else that I found during my research that I found interesting is the general power structure among males and female friend groups. And this is where the traditional traits of empathy and fairness that are typically attributed to women can go sideways, in my opinion. We're frequently told how females are more empathetic and fair than males. And I would agree with this statement, which is why the power structure among females in same-sex peer groups is more egalitarian, as boys, their peer group runs more in a hierarchical structure. A study I found in the British Journal of Developmental Psychology concluded that females would report feeling more negative than males when they achieved better outcomes than their close same-sex friends. Further results from study 1 indicated that the participants believed that their good friends would agree with their assessments. When asked what their good friends' attitudes would be if the participants were more successful than their friends compared with males, females believed that their good friends would think more negatively of them. So is egalitarianism always a good thing? Because I see a few downsides to this in particular, and especially the results of this study. The fear of doing better or standing out, it would lend to some females to want to hold themselves back because they don't want to stand out. And then when a female does stand out, the other ladies may not be a big fan of it and will attempt to pull her down or pull her back in. So she is in line and hasn't really advanced any more than the rest of the friend group. And this is where the tactics of reputation destruction or ostracizing will usually come in. Now, feminists will blame this on the patriarchy.
Oh my god, is that the patriarchy?
For how women are competitive with each other, claiming that women are primarily driven by the social mechanisms due mainly to the fact that women, born and raised in a male-dominated space, yearn and desire the approval of men or to be able to benefit from the male gaze and internalize that perspective. I mean, how many times have we heard you suffer from internalized misogyny? I know I've been accused of it a multitude of times. Let me just be clear, I don't suffer from any internalized misogyny, but perhaps, here it is, mind-blowing idea. Maybe how competition manifests in females and males is simply because of biology.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
And because of what the opposite sex finds attractive. In this article in Psychology Today, Feminine Foes, New Science Explores Female Competition, they point out a statement by American evolutionary psychologist David Buss. And he found in the 80s that intrasexual competition takes two primary forms: self-promotion and competitor derogation. Men demonstrate and promote their physical abilities and social status, masculine traits favored by women. Women tend to promote their youth and physical attractiveness, feminine traits favored by men. Men try to derogate their rivals by disparaging their economic and physical strengths, while women criticize age, appearance, and character of their opponents. Now, again, feminists will say, well, women are competing with each other in this way because of the misogyny of men. And I would say that men behave the way they behave because of I don't even know what the term is, but it's because they want to attract a woman. So a female will behave in a certain way, especially in competition when it comes to the opposite sex, because you do what will attract a man. Like, this isn't, I don't think this should be like a big deal. Like, this should not be a scandalous statement. It's just, it is.
How dare you?
It is my opinion, though, that negative or toxic behavior from both men and women will typically stem from trauma and insecurities. But lately, society dismisses women's bad behavior because of their perceived victim status. The most common claim that you will find is women are being silenced for a long time. So people labeling them as shrills are just people that are uncomfortable or not used to women speaking up for themselves. Also, there is such an emphasis in society today on feelings, like statements of my truth, which you hear all the time, that women are allowed, if not encouraged, to be emotional. Dare I say, irrational. And yes, it is absolutely true that women for a long time weren't allowed to speak up, or their opinions were dismissed and diminished. But nowadays, a lot of the times, maybe you're just being a shrill. Now, most of the stuff that I've talked about so far focuses on the dynamics of young women, be it children, adolescents, women in the dating age. However, toxic femininity will not necessarily stop with age or wisdom, that wisdom being questionable. There are many instances where I have seen nurturing, a traditional positive trait, become overbearing. And I think it's kind of natural where your life changes, situation changes, and as women age, your attention shifts to your children. And I think we've all seen this in one form and another, where women who had some kind of toxic behavior or unhealthy competitiveness or aggressiveness when they were young, it then transfers also as an adult. And when it comes specifically to children and to parenting, the women will enter into what I like to call the nurturing Olympics. And this usually presents itself in as I am the best nurturer. I am the best parent. I give my child the healthiest snacks. My child is in the best programs. My child is the smartest. They are so gifted, and they just kind of enter into this aggressive competition through their child. And of course, a parent can be proud of their child, but there is a difference between being proud and the moment that you hear another parent make a comment or brag on their own child just because they're excited and they're happy, that you have some one-upper come in and be like, well, I don't serve my child that, or my child does X. Like, this is not healthy. This is not a good thing. And not only are we talking about the competitiveness that happens amongst mothers about who is the better mother, but then we also have the issue of helicopter parenting, where nurturing with good intentions can become so overbearing it is to the detriment of the child. In this article, Helicopter Parenting May Negatively Affect Children's Emotional Well-Being, it says, our research showed that children with helicopter parents may be less able to deal with the challenging demands of growing up, especially with navigating the complex school environment, said Nicole B. Perry, PhD, from the University of Minnesota, the lead author of this study. She also goes on to say that children who cannot regulate their emotions and behavior effectively are more likely to act out in the classroom, to have a harder time making friends, and to struggle in school. Now, full disclosure, I am not a parent, and I would assume that everybody loves their children, or at least most people love their children if we're in a healthy parental situation. And helicopter parenting typically happens out of love and concern and wanting to make sure that your child is safe. However, it is possible to become overbearing and to over-nurture to the detriment of your child. So that's another thing where a trait of femininity that's typically seen as positive can become a toxic behavior. Now, you may be saying, but Mercedes, all the examples that you have given so far are how women aggressively interact with other women. So clearly it's men who are toxic towards women. Women aren't toxic towards men. And nay, I would say that is a false statement. But do not worry, I have not forgotten how aggressive women can be towards men. Like, it's a thing. Because women are much more empathetic and in touch with emotion, female aggression presents with manipulation and psychological abuse. Things such as backhanded compliments, guilt tripping, the silent treatment, arbitrarily revoked love, attention, sex. And these are cruel tricks that are all common methods of manipulation. Then there's also intentional isolation and blatant rejection of their partners. There's nothing more damaging than messing with the psychology of a person by rejecting them, giving them a cold shoulder, ignoring them. These all are things that are very manipulative and psychologically damaging, especially when done persistently over a long period of time. And it's hard for men to defend themselves or claim psychological abuse because abusive females are usually extremely socially apt. They know how to manipulate. They know how to use the automatic kind of built-in trust for women, that women are typically victims to their benefit, to almost gaslight their partner into being like, I'm not being abusive towards you. You're just being super sensitive. And if a man has decided that he has had enough and it's time to move on, or even if they mutually separate, women's aggressiveness towards their former partner, if they have children, will present in using the children and the visitation and the access to the children. And unfortunately, they do this with the help of the courts, because courts will typically default and give visitation to the mother over the father. Especially when it comes to primary custody. Now, the point to this video is not to denigrate and attack my fellow women, or I'm not self-loathing of my own gender or anything like that. It is simply to point out that women are just as capable as men of toxic behavior. However, this behavior will typically manifest differently. Now, that doesn't mean that women can't be physically abusive to men, and it doesn't mean that men can't be psychological or manipulative towards women. These are just the ways that it typically presents in the different sexes. If you hear heavy breathing, it's my dog. He's asleep. I am just emphasizing equal opportunity horribleness. Yes. All right? You know, again, equality. Now, feminists and many on the left will be very quick to scapegoat men or the patriarchy for the trash behavior of women, or excuse it because women were historically oppressed for so long. Well, newsflash, we are no longer oppressed. Any woman out there that is using this type of tactic, or any man or any person, in fact, that is excusing this trash behavior, you need to just stop. And women, you can no longer wear this armor of victim status. It's not cute. We really need to move on from it. And before the feminists or the leftists accuse me of not supporting women or being a guy's girl or a pick-me, I would suggest that you step back, because in fact, I am blessed with many female friendships, some really amazing, supportive, and nurturing women that feed into my life and I feed into theirs, and we encourage and we uplift each other. And the trick is, with any friendship, in order for it to be a true friendship, is to be able to find people that not only support you, but share your values. There's nothing inherently toxic about men, and there's nothing inherently toxic about women. It's about individual responsibility. It is the person's choices which will determine whether their behavior is good or bad. Now, that is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this content, or if you enjoyed any of my other content, I would suggest that you'd hit subscribe, ring that bell, give this video a thumbs up. If you don't like it, you can give me a thumbs down, whatevs. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know if you also agree with me, disagree with me. I love to hear any kind of feedback. Also, you can follow me on all my social media platforms as It's Mercedes. I'm pretty much everywhere. And if you are a woman and anything that I shared here today particularly resonates with you, especially about finding a connection with fellow women that share your values and are there to support you, I would suggest that you check out my website, Libertas Sisters. There is a link down below. It is an online community focused on the values of femininity, self-reliance, and freedom. So that's all I have for you today, and I will see you in the next video. A study that I found in the British Journal of Development. A study that I found in the British Journal of A study that I found in the British Journal of Developmental. Oh my gosh. Developmental.